I suck at Onslaught, and yet I still headed to champion. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ladpad, and today I'm going to be showing some of the worst replays I had in the Onslaught game mode. Now, a lot of times what I cover in World of Tanks is the highlights, the best moments, what happens when it all goes right. But, if we're being honest, a lot of what we learn happens when things go terribly wrong. And so by watching back your old replays and seeing at the mistakes that you make, you can actually become a much stronger and better player for it. I'm rolling out here in Champion in the 60 TP, and we're going to have the most powerful ability in this game mode pop up. Right there, we have the Scout ability. The airplane shows us exactly where people are. Pause the replay. As I came to here, my initial thinking is that the west is a better spot. It's got 2 artillery strikes, the east side only has 1, and so by capturing those points, we would be in a very advantageous situation. However, as the battle unfolds, 2 big things become apparent right now. The enemy team is pushing in this direction on the west with a huge glut of tanks, and on the eastern position, my team is going. I disagree with their choice, but when your team does something in Onslaught, you have to follow through with them. If you get isolated on a flank with no retreat, you are dead. And in a tank like a 60 TP, you cannot flex or move out. Even worse, I'm moving up here, and I'm going to be aggressive in this position. I want to back up my friendly 60 TP, but at this point, I should know, and honestly, I could feel it as it was happening. I knew I was already a dead man. I'm telling him to fall back. It doesn't work, and so now I'm thinking maybe I'll try to survive as long as I can and try to stall for time as my allies flank around. Unfortunately, I'm having some brutal shells slapped into my tank. I've lost 2 crew members. I'm going to heal them right now, and I'm going to get pushed. I put a shot in, I'm firing heat, so of course that doesn't penetrate an IS-7's side, and now I'm getting pushed and flanked by multiple different people, and already, having lost 2 tanks right here, I've probably lost the game. I can't say single-handedly, but with this fellow 60 TP, we've lost the game for our team. We're already down 4,000 hit points, and in just a few seconds, I'm going to be dead, my ally is dead, and this game is going to be completely over. Take a look at the positioning on the field. I'm in the middle of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 enemy tanks. On our other flank, with the Super Conqueror, the STB, the RHM, they just farmed the entirety of a 60 TP. So if I had pulled back, the health would be about even. If I had stayed and retreated immediately and just left my ally to die, he was already dead, but I could have kept my gun in the fight. Instead, I made a crucial mistake by following him off into oblivion, and my team eventually goes on to lose this, and I believe I get kicked out of champion in the very near future. So, lesson number 1, if you're in a heavy tank that cannot rotate, cannot move, is too slow to react, you cannot go off on a flank on yourself. If you do it, you've got to be in a very defensible position that you can escape out of or retreat out of, and really the lesson should be for a heavy tank, you always stick with your team. On our second game, I'm going to be rolling out in the Super Conqueror, another really powerful tank in this game mode, and the meta, if you will, is a lot of tanks will try to rush A1, and if you can get 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 tanks up there, you can generally win the A1 position. I'm in a tank that's way too slow to get up there. I actually don't own a CS63, so I don't see a point in rushing A1 in my tank selections. And so I'm going to take this hold down ridge. What makes this different from our previous game is in a game like this, you can rotate down to this corner, and that means your allies can put in some defensive shots to help you out. We are facing against a pretty interesting team comp right here, and that's going to be because they have a Badger and a Foch B. Once again, this is a champion game, and so I'm just going to poke around and try to get some bleed as we go through. I've got a great turret, I'm great in a hold down position, so I don't have any major objectives right here outside of don't lose hit points and try to shave off a few from the enemy team. There's no major push, I'm just waiting for the A1 area fight either to finish, or I'm waiting for this big team fight to open up in some way. Wait for an enemy player to make a big mistake. Otherwise, I'm just going to take chancy shots, and it's going to be a little boring for the meantime. One big thing you have to make sure you do in Onslaught is you have to be impatient. If you get impatient, if you try to make moves just to make moves, then you're going to die and you're going to cost your team a lot. Right here, I've got a shot at the E50M. He's side-scraping in a medium tank, I'm hull down in my heavy tank, and so of course I'm going to start winning that bleed matchup. So these kind of micro mini plays, they're important, they do add up in the long term, but the real fight is being won over here in the A1 area. We've got two IS-7s right over there, and they seem to have pressure on the cap. If you stay on the artillery strike first, then you've got a serious advantage in that situation. And so it's not a bad idea for us right now just to slow play this and wait for that fight, hopefully to turn out in our favor. Thankfully, this map has not been quite as bad as the first replay where I insta-died, and so I'm just seeking for opportunities. Something on my mind at this point in time was the Foch B had not been seen in quite a while, and so I'm wondering where he popped up to. My guess was he was still in position and that he was waiting for us to dive on this IS-7. See, if multiple of our heavy tanks try to dive into the artillery strike versus the IS-7, my guess was that the E50M and the Foch B were going to immediately crest over, unload their clips or their high DPM guns, and we were going to take an enormous amount of damage. And so that's why I'm not even considering pressuring that situation. Right here, I'm fighting against the E50M. I'm hull down. He's not, and so I've got a decent chance of penetrating his turret. I am just a little bit too far to the right that time, and so I end up bouncing. But these kind of engagements can make a huge deal. We seem to be winning this fight over here with the IS-7s and the 277s, and so that's going well, at least for the moment. Notice I keep shooting at the Super Conqueror turret. The mantlet and the turret ring often have some weak points. You're not going to penetrate them consistently, but you do have an odd chance of going through. I'd say 1 out of 4, maybe 1 out of 3 of these APCR shells are going to penetrate that turret, and so it's always worth having a shot when you're playing a competitive game mode like Onslaught. I'm going to poke over, try to put a shot in the mantlet. Looks like I probably damaged his gun, and now we're getting pressured by the IS-7. And if this IS-7 is pushing up, something is probably happening behind us that is giving him reason to be this aggressive. I take a shot at the Badger. I actually don't believe that one connects, although I'm a little confused. A, why it didn't penetrate, and B, how on earth he's invisible. Onslaught has some really weird spotting mechanics in this game mode, and it's bizarre. Also, pause. This Foch B has finally popped up behind us. He's in a very, very dangerous position, at least for a moment, but once he lets out his clip, we can dive him, and he's going to die very quickly. The cost of that is if we dive on him, we're going to be out of the main fight, and these guys over here can be flanked. And so we're down 3,500 hit points. The game has really turned on its head in a really negative way, and I decide to stay here. I get a tracking shot into the IS-7. I want to stay in the main fight, and I'm going to trust my T-57 down below to kill that Foch B. They're pushing over. My goal should be to shoot as many high DPM tanks as I can. It's not really worth shooting heavy tanks in this situation unless it's completely free. You'd much rather get out the more dangerous guns, and the Foch B and the E50M have some of the most dangerous guns in this game mode, so it's very important to knock them out ASAP. My fuel tanks get damaged. You always want to repair fuel tanks as quickly as you can, and I prioritize that Foch B. He's dead. My fuel tanks get damaged again. If I didn't repair them earlier in the game, I would have lost and been set on fire. Now, take a look. We are actually down on tanks. Diving on that Foch B did end up leaving this IS-7 and CS-63 friend vulnerable to the enemy push. However, we're up on HP. This T-57 has 2,300 hit points, and this IS-7 has 365. What should I do in this scenario? I've got a Badger coming at me. I've got a Super Conqueror pressuring me, and this IS-7 is a one-shot. He's practically dead already. If I just pull back to the T-57, I would have support from him. He's going to kill the E-50M, and that would leave us in a 2-on-3 scenario where a lot of these enemy tanks are severely damaged. However, if I push up, I'm going to be in a 2-on-1 with high DPM tanks, and I'm in a load of trouble. The best case scenario, the best decision for me right here would just be to fall back to the T-57. The T-57 can kill the E-50M. He can pressure these tanks just a little bit, and maybe we would have a chance of winning this game. Instead, take a look. I'm driving forward. I'm pushing into 2 enemy tanks, one of them being a Badger, and I realize what's going on. He's shooting me. I foolishly shoot him because that's going to actually amplify his reload, so he's immediately reloaded. I'm ammo racked, and so with an ammo rack and a damaged fuel tank. I now, maybe if I can put in a few shells, could have helped swing the tide towards my team. Instead, I get ammo racked. And while the ammo rack is completely unfortunate, that really threw the tide of this game. Even if I wasn't ammo racked, I was going to die pretty quickly. I was maybe going to get 2 more shells out. And those 2 shells could have been the difference. But my biggest mistake was, if I would have just pulled back immediately, I could have won this game. If I would have just fallen back to the T-57 immediately and had better map awareness, this game could have been a victory for my team. Instead, I'm very angry in the chat, and that's all you can be when you get ammo racked and killed. I got ammo racked, and that was not my fault. What was my fault is not falling back immediately when I had the opportunity. If I had killed this Foch B and then ran around to stick with my T-57 friend, I could have been in a fantastic position to help carry this game. Imagine my hit points. I lost about 1,700 in that foolish push up on the 60 TP or on the Super Conqueror and the Badger. If I had kept those 1,700 hit points, my T-57 would not have been as vulnerable. We would have had very, very dangerous guns still left in the game, and I think there's a really good chance that we win this. Instead, I throw the game by pushing forward. I get ammo racked, so that definitively does not help whatsoever, and this ends up being yet another loss. Our third game is going to roll out here on Sand River, and on this one, I noticed something very quickly, or at least I think I noticed something very quickly. First off, our light unfortunately misses the plane. We only get 4 out of 7 players, but what I do notice is they're sending, it looks like 3 or 4 tanks south, and my team is sending tanks to the north. So in this situation, I really feel comfortable pushing forward up into the north. It's really critical that you understand that if you're not doing something in this game mode, if you're not holding a flank or you're not shooting something actively, you are generally having opportunity cost loss. If you're not active in the game, then there's a good chance that you're throwing, because if you're not firing your gun, an enemy player probably is, and he's getting more value than you are, and you're going to lose. So my goal is, I think I'm completely safe here in the north. I saw a lot of their tanks go south, and I see an RHM that I can pick on over here. I want to put in a shot. I find the CS-63, unfortunately take a shell, and I accidentally load high explosive. I meant to shoot the RHM. Instead, I only do 119 to the CS-63 turret. So now I know there are 2 players off here, and I know that my RHM is up here in this northern flank. I got Super Conqueror help down from the south, and I still feel really comfortable. I'm going to repair my ammo rack right here, and I get spotted. An AMX 50B is randomly out here, and so now things have changed. There are 3 of them on this northern flank. The 50B has shots on me if I push back too far, but I should be able to rely on this RHM for help. I'm also down a significant amount of health, and with this RHM popping up behind me, I lose even more. Really unfortunate that my RHM wasn't paying attention. And look here, I've got an RHM I know is shooting me in the rear end, and a CS-63 just now popped up, and I'm pressuring the 50B for no reason. I should be absolutely concentrated on this mini fight that I could have won with the RHM's help. Instead, I react too slowly, and I am caught out. I'm getting whack-a-moled by the RHM, whack-a-moled by the CES, and in just the first minute and a half of this game, I'm dead. Look at the CS-63. He's on 654 health. That means I could have put 2 more shells in and then killed him. If I hadn't wasted the time shooting that 50B that didn't matter in my initial fight, I could be alive. I could be fighting with this RHM for help. I maybe could have bounced a few more shells from the CS-63, and at the very least I would have output more damage. Instead, I wasted my time focusing on targets that didn't matter to my initial fight, and I put way too much trust into my belief that the enemy team was only south. I thought it was only the RHM on this flank. When I found out there was a CS-63 here as well, I immediately should have focused those players down. Instead, I acted like a fool, and in Champion, once again, I'm going to end up costing my team. I only do 1,300 damage. I don't even get my own hit points done, and so I have thrown this game. My team is at a tremendous disadvantage, and with this all done and said, this is going to be our 3rd loss of the video. My mistake was I went off on my own. I had the opportunity to play safer. I could have worked with my RHM pal and friend and done a lot of work, and instead I wasted time, I didn't prioritize the targets, and I was off on a flank, mostly alone again. In our final game, I'm going to roll out in the Centurion Action 10, and I'm playing on, I believe, Ghost Town. On Ghost Town, you want to have a couple of tanks flanking around, patrolling some of the edges and putting in sniping fire, and the goal of this strategy is to shut down flanks. I'm a firm believer that the 1 line and the 4 line are the most important. This western side is the most important on this map because you get 2 artillery strikes, and if you got 2 more arty strikes, that means a slow play game is going to allow you to do a lot more. In this game, it's not the best one I've had in Onslaught, not by a country mile, but it's going to show how I learned from the games that I played. I believe this is after the 3 games that I showed earlier, and just to start off with, I get some easy blind fires, or easy sniping, flanking shots into the enemy team. These are what you're going to call chip damage, or bleed, and so I'm not winning any fights, but I'm helping my team slowly whittle down our opponents. Also, I'm pre-aiming, because I'm expecting the RHM to pop up in that situation, and I get to trade a shell into the RHM for only 1 in return, and pause. This is the key moment of this replay, because I'm now in a 2 versus 1. I've been in these situations before where I was off on a flank on my own and at serious risk of being overrun. And in the 3 replays I showed you earlier, I get overran. You'll remember in the last Centurion game, I got 2v1, the RHM and the CS63, exactly like these tanks in front of us, just demolished me, blew me up, and killed me with only 1300 damage to my name. In our first replay, the 60 TP replay, I went off on a flank with another 60 TP, and I went straight into the heart of the enemy. In this situation, I know that the majority of the enemy is over here. However, I'm still outnumbered. I can only stay here so long as I know that the enemy team is not pushing me. This flank is very important because they expect me not to be here. They expect their CS63 and their RHM to push me off. But instead, if I'm able to put shots into their rear end where they don't expect it, I'm going to provide immense value to my team so long as I don't die quickly. So my goal is to put in some sniping shells, exactly like this one, to pop my Inspire ability, which I should be popping up just right now. And so now, this 60 TP expected his backside to be safe because the CS63 and the RHM were supposed to help him out and clear this flank. They're not doing that, they're making a huge mistake, and so I'm just free farming the back of an entire 60 TP. Also notice, the keen eye will have noticed my RHM friend popped his plane on these players. That's excellent play. Check John the Terrible, he's a cracked player. He's made it to Legend, so obviously one of the best players in the Onslaught game mode. And he's making sure that I know when these players want to push me. And if I do get pushed, I have avenues. I can come back here, and that allows this T-57 to have shots to protect me. So I've got a good defensible position if I need to do so. So, with that said, awesome play by the RHM. I messaged him after this game and just thanked him for his excellent awareness. And now I'm just feeding Inspire to my team. That's giving them upwards of a 21% reload boost in all of these games. And I get to have significant damage placed into these 60 TPs. Also, this 60 TP pops up in front of me, and now I get to free farm his side. The RHM planes the CS63 and the enemy RHM once again, and so whereas I was about to have to run, now I'm free to continue shooting the sides of these enemy players. Now, in a moment, I'm going to realize something. I'm going to realize that this CS63 and RHM are not going to be spotted forever. In fact, they just got unspotted right there, and my RHM isn't going to have many more side shots to put in, so there's a distinct lack of shots for me right now, and I'm at huge risk of being pushed. My team's up by around 3,000 HP at the moment, and if I'm hanging out here, then this RHM might push me. So I pre-aim the bush, expect him to be there, and put in a good shell. And so now, I'm on the back side of the hill. I'm just a little farther back, and if they try to push me, it's going to be even harder for them to do so. However, it's still possible from them, and so in just a moment, I'm going to have an idea. I asked the RHM, can you spot them? Again, it seems he cannot, so now I'm just getting the heck out of here. I have finally learned my lesson that being in a 2 versus 1 is a bad idea in a competitive game mode where everybody is just as good, if not better, than you are. So I pull back to this defensive location where they probably won't be able to spot me, and where I've got a potential hand or a potential help from the T-57. I also know that with this T-57 pushing forward, my lane of safety is going to be a lot more. You see right here, this T-57 is here. All their enemy tanks are stuck, so they don't have shots on me. So if I can patrol this ridge below the CS-63's gun, I'm going to be in safety. So, popping Inspire, as it seems the main fight is happening, that's going to help my allies out. It's going to give a huge 21% reload boost to everybody. I would have had the kill shot on that 60 TP if he didn't already get killed. And so now we're up 3-0. It's really looking like a stomp. And somebody spots the CS-63. I'm now safe because this RHM can snipe for me, and I'm going to stay on the low ground where the enemy team can attack me. Right here, I put in a pretty well aimed shot, I think. Unfortunately, the shell dives low, and this is a 5-0 route, and it's going to get just a little bit higher in just a moment because I get a chance to free farm a CS-63. The Centurion with the Inspire ability just has significantly better damage per minute than that tank does, and so I just get a free farm at the end of the game because of my patience. And with that, we got our first and only victory of this video. Notice how my plays over here help to free farm and bleed the heavy tank engagement, and those deeply wounded 60 TPs really couldn't do anything in the main fight against our full health heavies. Where this game was won is this CS-63 and this RHM didn't push against me. They didn't get me out of the fight, and so I kept popping Inspire, I kept boosting my allies, and it just led to a victory for the team. I got value, they did not, and my RHM made sure I knew where their movements were so that I was always safe. In Onslaught, you've got to learn from your mistakes. You've got to look at your awful replays, and I showed you 3 of them just a bit ago. Learn from your mistakes. Learn from going off into unwise flanks and figure out how to do them better. I'm not saying never flank, but if you flank, do it somewhere that's safe and secure. I dropped to this hill, I put in shots, and I always had the ability to drop back under the cover of this friendly T-57 ally. You can make hugely impactful plays without taking incredible risk. Instead of looking at post-game results for this video, we're going to instead take a look at my end-of-season games. I played 649 battles as a solo/platoon player, and I played 101 battles in a super platoon. I should preface this video by saying in this season, almost all of these came when I was in silver. I had a great time playing with some clanmates, but I found that I was only able to progress when I platooned a little bit, and almost all of my upward mobility happened when I was solo queuing. That might not be how it works for you, but that's how it works for me. I found solo queuing was the key for me getting up there in rank. I end at 2005. 2005 is not my high. I think my highest was around 2084, but this sticks me into champion, and it allows me to get the CS-63 3D skin. That is to say, Wargaming is going to release a CS-63 reskin called the Hurricane, and if you average gold in every season, then you've got a chance of picking that up after the Jade Pegasus season is finished. Unfortunately, when I played the first season, I was mostly just playing around, having some fun. I actually think I might have gotten up to gold in the first season. I'm not quite sure, but I decayed down to silver because I just stopped playing, I think, for the last month when I got bored of the mode. In this one, I had a very specific goal. I thought I could hit champion. I ended up hitting champion on multiple occasions, and that was fantastic. I was not great. As the stats will show you, I had a lot of key mistakes. I experimented with a wide variety of different tanks, and you can see exactly what I landed on. My 60 TP was the backbone of a lot of my heavy tank maps. I played the 60 TP in all manner of maps and game modes because it's so incredibly flexible as a heavy tank. It's got gun depression, it's got armor, it's got health, and it's got alpha damage, which is just super important. And because this season of Onslaught gave everybody better accuracy, it allowed you to snapshot and take away a key weakness of the 60 TP that otherwise isn't there. On the STRV 103B, I played a lot of those games while I was in silver. It did a lot of good for me during those early stages, but once I got up to champion, once I was playing Docky or OP Hacker every game, I just got demolished. I got trashed by those better players, and I found it that the STR V103B was not very effective in the higher tier game play. My best performer, I think not by damage but by win rate, is the Centurion Action 10. My Centurion Action 10 damage is actually not that impressive. It's only around 2,500. But what the Centurion allows you to do is boost your entire team. The 60 TP, its ability is completely selfish. The STRV 103B, it's completely selfish ability. So is the Super Conqueror. But in a Centurion, and in a lot of the Inspire medium tanks, you get to boost up all your allies. You're giving them, I believe, between 9% better reload and 21% better reload for 20 seconds at a time. And that swings entire fights. Imagine one team gets a plus 20% rate of fire boost and the other team doesn't. Right away, you know that one team is getting 20% more shells. One team gets to fire 5 shots and the other team gets to fire 6. And it's really clear that the Inspire ability is completely busted. Even though the Cent didn't have my best damage per game, it by far had my best win rate when playing a decent amount of games, and that was one of the keys. I played also almost all of those games at a high level, so that win rate, if I'd been playing back in silver, back in bronze for the first few hours of this game mode, I'm sure that Centurion Action 10, that win rate would be up even higher, because I was playing against people like Docky, people like OP Hacker, just time and time again. That win rate went down considerably from what it could have been, and 55% while playing at a champion level is fantastic. The Super Conqueror, I put in a fair amount of games, actually had very good results with it. 52% wins it's winning more than you're losing. And then the AMX 13105, it's a decent tank, but I do think it's completely outclassed by the RHM. I don't own a flip wagon, unfortunately, and I would say one of the key objectives I'm going to have before the next season of Onslaught is probably going to be to try to pick up a flip wagon. The RHM is so powerful in this game mode, and it looks like so much fun to play, and so I'd say if you're prepping for the next season of Onslaught, definitely get yourself a Panzer wagon. It's going to be worth it. I would also shout out, I think the second tank that I really missed out on having is I don't have an E50M. And I think the E50M might be, if I had to rearrange my tier list from a few videos ago, I think the E50M probably deserves to go in S tier. Some people would say the Object 430U is on the same level, but the E50M has a few things that the 430U doesn't. The E50M, I believe, has just a touch more gun depression. It's just got that APCR round that can penetrate through tracks that allows you to track opponents and do damage. It also doesn't have massive critical hit damage. If you take a look at my 430U stats, I only won 44% of the wins. I should say that in the games where I wasn't ammo racked from full health and the games where I wasn't set on fire for 1,000, I won a good chunk of those 430U games. However, I don't have incredible equipment, and the fact that I was probably set on fire / ammo racked in the 430U in about 40% of my games means that the tank just felt too unreliable for me to ever play, and I thought there were much better options in the E50M. Sure, the 430U has a better base rate of fire, but the E50M was so strong in this game mode, and the ability to ram medium tanks to win engagements was so powerful that I'd say the E50M, the RHM, Panzer Wagon are two must-have tanks for the next upcoming season of Onslaught. With that said, I loved Onslaught. I learned a lot. It honestly, I think, made me a much better player because I was playing with Unicums and against Unicums really just about every single match, and I was getting my rear end handed to me. It forced me to think about my strategies. It forced me to think about the mistakes I was making. And I think I'm going to be a better player for the next season of Onslaught and a better player in just the random queue. It made me more thoughtful. It made me a little less risk averse. And that's a great thing in getting better at this game. So, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you like seeing a YouTuber actually suck. For once, I truly was awful in the replays shown today. And please, learn from my mistakes and get a little bit better. None of us are too good to learn a little bit more. And with that, I'm Lad, and I'm out.